Welcome back to another episode of Right Here in Mass. Joining me today is Danyl Collings, who founded DC Valuations in 2018 and currently manages a team of certified and trainee appraisers providing credible and reliable appraisal services throughout Massachusetts and New Hampshire. His firm works with a variety of clients, including banks, credit unions, law firms, real estate agents, and individuals needing valuation services. And during his spare time, he enjoys redeveloping distressed properties, working on his golf game, and spending quality time with his family. Danyl, welcome to the show.
Ashley, thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yes, it is my pleasure to have you. And I would love to start off this show by having you share with our listeners more about who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, I went to good old Northeastern University when it was affordable, and I had a great time and experience. I studied communications, and I originally started doing public relations, high-tech PR. So I remember when they were talking about online banking, and people were like, I don't know if that's going to work. And now look at it
My
today.
gosh.
So cool things like that to see it come to fruition. And, eventually I just kind of got into real estate. I always listen to my friend Adam, and he's made two choices in my career, real estate and communications. And I listened to him, and they were the best words of advice I ever took. And got into real estate, did that for about 7 years full time as a real estate agent. And then in 2009, I got into appraisals, and I've been here for 16 years.
My gosh.
Yeah.
And so it's, of course, natural for you, it seems like, for you to transition from being a real estate agent to getting into appraisals. But what was it about appraisals that made you realize that you kind of wanted to change gears?
So, it was actually, I took a brief stint working for UPS as a sales rep, and I realized, Ashley, that I did not like driving from Jamaica Plain to Rhode Island.
Jeez.
Well, I loved the company, but I didn't like that. And I also realized that I really loved, I took, there was like a brief break, when the market was just terrible, getting terrible. And I realized that I really like real estate, but I think appraisals, I had a friend who was a super, super smart person, and she still is. And she said, have you ever thought about appraisals? And, I looked at it. And to me, it was an opportunity where they approached me to manage an office of appraisers, and I took it. And so I really got that experience immediately of managing people that I never did. And I immediately got the curiosity of these appraisals. What do you use them for? It's not just refinance purchase, but it's divorce, it's probate, it's new construction, it's market value. If you just want to know, it could be commercial. We help with some commercial stuff with the partner. So anything valuation related we can do. And I
Mhm.
think that's what made it fascinating, because there's just so many different facets of the business.
Yeah, and that's a good point that you bring up is that people don't always realize all of its different use cases and why it can be so beneficial to have an appraiser that they can work with and turn to.
Yeah. I mean, and then you get into, the types of clients you work with, confidentiality, everything's highest and best use. So just even in that those layers I told you, there's even more sub layers of, you can do this, you can't do that. The uniform standards of professional appraisal practice, which is a lot, called USPAP, and the minimum standards you have to follow. So we have standards and rules just like any profession, and we are reviewed just like any profession.
Oh, yeah. And so I'm curious to hear, like, I'd like to go more into those use cases, especially like the commercials piece for any of our listeners who may feel like they may need it as it relates to their career or business. If you could share more about what that looks like.
Sure. So, I mean, as I mentioned, a majority of what we do is residential appraisals. So like you mentioned, we work with banks, credit unions, attorneys, real estate agents are great resource partners. We do stuff with court systems where they need valuations of stuff. Recently, I'd say within the last 8 months, I partnered with a very intelligent and smart commercial appraiser. So, for example, I come back and we had an estate that someone wants us to value from October 8th of 2025. And there's two residential properties. Two are in Milton. One's a ranch, one's a colonial, and the third one is a warehouse in Hyde Park. Traditionally, we weren't able to do that. Now we could provide a full service and say, yes, we can help them. So it's a great, the ability to provide full service for someone, I think, is what we try to do. We've always been
Mhm.
able to do it on the residential, but now we can do it on the commercial end.
Yeah, absolutely. And what goes into an appraisal, or like when someone's thinking about evaluation, could you share like what exactly that is and what it entails?
Sure. So, when I first got into business and I heard the word work file, I said, my goodness, you got to do one of these on every property you do. But we basically, it's like that manila folder, but now it could be a Dropbox folder or it could be a Google Drive folder. And so if you're doing, 16 Pine Lane, you're building a folder for 16 Pine Lane. And in that folder, actually, you're going to start with, the property card, which has some information on the property. Then we go into, has it been listed before? If it was listed in 2022, at least I have an idea of kind of maybe the condition it's in or it was in. So I save that and mark that, MLS sheet 2022. Then I go into the deed. I have to know what rights the property has so I can confirm highest and best use. If there's some sort of restriction, that's going to limit the highest and best use, if there's some sort of boundary issues or something going on, or if there's some sort of like life estate, let's say a relative allows you to live in the property until you're deaf, then it reverts back to them. That can limit marketability. So the deed tells us, is it free and clear, highest and best use? And then we look at what's called the plat map. The plat map is sort of like a look at the boundaries. It's a rough estimate of the boundaries and the area, and we put that in the report. And so all this is work file, even before you do anything.
Yeah.
The client order form's telling you this is for refinance, this is for a purchase, this is the type of report type they want. But if it's a single family, we put it on a report type. And then any kind of additional conditions they need us to add. And then that's pretty much your work file. And we take this out in the field with our iPads. Everyone in my office, iPad is a requirement. And that way you can reference anything strange. So I saw a house today in Walpole that the town has is 2,012 square feet, and I measured 2553. And the
Oh,
reason is
wow.
because, yeah, and it's a bonus for him and
Mhm.
his wife. The reason is because they have a room above the garage that's heated that was never included in the assessor card, but we give them that because it's livable space. So he's
Mhm.
going to get a higher, most likely valuation because we're using larger size houses. So
Oh,
we're,
yeah.
yeah, so we're not even just collecting the information, we're verifying things on the field. But the work
Hmm.
is where it starts.
Definitely. And so you mentioned an interesting point there that having more space can lead to a higher valuation. What are other things that could also potentially lead to higher valuations for residential properties?
Sure. I mean, everybody loves granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, versus, I call it the 70s kitchen. Everybody loves glass shower doors, or most people.
Mhm.
Glass shower doors, a nice vanity, one of these name brand vanities, maybe even from Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever. Kohler or, some really nice fixtures and things, recessed lights. So all these kind of things that modernize a house appeal to a large pool of buyers because most people are
Mhm.
like me. I don't know about you, Ashley. I don't want to do anything. I
Yeah.
want to move in and do nothing. So that's, I always say kitchens and bathrooms are huge drivers of value. Then you
Mhm.
have square footage. People like space because square footage kind of ties into how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms usually. And then you get into sort of the other stuff, the windows, the siding, the roofing, the heating system, central air. But kitchens and bathrooms are huge because you can add most of those other things,
Mhm.
except for square footage. It's expensive to add square footage, obviously. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you make a really good point there that like a lot of the things people can do is something that they have control over and have the ability to change themselves. But what happens if there's a factor that someone doesn't have control over that could potentially negatively impact their valuation, if that makes sense?
No, I mean, or maybe let me see if I understand that question. I mean, or something that could negatively affect your valuation.
Yeah, like something that they can't exactly change control of. Like I don't know if
Oh,
location might be something like that or anything.
yeah.
Like
I
how
mean,
people can work with that ultimately.
yeah. I mean, so this house in Walpole, I saw it today. I mean, I could look and see the commuter rail tracks, but it's not up on the track, which
Hmm.
is good. One of my comparables is on the other side of the track, but the same kind of distance. So good. So I have something that kind of matches, and I
Hmm.
can see when I put them all in the grid if there's any kind of differences based on the values. So that's something. It could be that, you inherit a house, you don't have a lot of money, and you got to sell it as is. You're not going to sell it at the prime. So you might be more for a fixer-upper, or you may be for more of an investor. You could have just a very small house that's going to affect, how much you can get. If it's a two-bedroom or one-bedroom, obviously you're going to be limited. If you have some sort of like septic issues, you can't get Title V, and you want to sell it without Title V, that's going to affect value. And you could just have some kind of, topography issues. Maybe you get flooded. If you I think there's a difference between flood insurance and you actually get flooded often. That's not good. So those will affect value. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, but
You
I
can't
think you
change them. You can't change them so much.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think it's kind of like knowing what you can change and being able to do that if possible to kind of like offset what you can't change, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, some people like me, I don't mind picking my own kitchen and bathroom and you know, uh, hardwood flooring or carpeting and painting. Those are easy things. And some
Hmm.
people like to put their stamp on it, as they say. But yeah, other things, like I said, square footage gets expensive and um, and you can't move the house.
Right.
So
Unfortunately. Although I
it
think
gets expensive. You could.
yeah.
Yes, yes, yes,
I was
yes.
gonna say, I think back in the day, a long time ago, they used to move houses, but not so much anymore.
Oh, sure, sure, sure. Or, I add to that like a historical house. It could be a good and it could be a bad, actually. It limits what you could do where you need approval. But
Hmm.
some people like that vintage, kind of thing that I'm not interested in.
Yeah.
So,
That's also, it is interesting that you share that though, because I think that's probably something you see a lot in Massachusetts is like the historic homes, and the restrictions that might be placed on them with preservation and all of that stuff. Like, do you ever have to deal with like historical commissions or work with them, on certain things?
I think the key, I just did one. It'll come to me, the town I was in, just probably a week and a half ago. And the great thing again is I had another historical house.
Hmm.
So it wasn't an issue. My business is all about comparables. Do we have something that has the similar feature or amenity? In-ground pool. Do we have something? And that's where we can grab adjustments from. It could be sensitivity analysis. It could be paired sales. There's just so many different ways, cost and segregation analysis. There's so many ways that we can determine what an adjustment is for something. But number one is, do I have something that has the same thing? If the subject's on a busy street, do I have a busy street sale? And I say to the buyers, you're on a kind of a busy street, I'm going to need something similar. So
Yeah.
I tell them so that they can, argue with me on the front end, maybe.
What would you say are the benefits of someone working with an appraiser like yourself?
I think we could provide a lot of value in regards to the market, sort of the market of what's going on. Like I think right now I'm seeing more kind of staying on the market. I'm seeing more price changes. I think, the economic data does tell stories. I think people are concerned. You're seeing a lot of companies cutting. I mean, I just saw UPS is going to cut like 40,000 or something like that. So
Hmm.
when you see those numbers, it makes people, I think, hold on to their money a little bit. Uh,
Yeah.
so, so that just affects value. And we could kind of tell you, okay, the market's kind of stable, what the absorption rate is of, if you got 30 houses on the market, how long should it take for those to go? And that usually tells you if it's a buyer's market, a seller's market, et cetera. Excuse me. So, I mean, we can help someone with that. We can help someone with strategy, as in if you buy a fixer-upper and you want to do, XYZ, it's not necessarily what you spend because we can all get there differently. You might have a cousin who's a contractor who gives you a great deal or a plumber. It's
Hmm.
about what you're putting into the house. And we could tell you, okay, if that house was on the market right today, this is what it's going to be worth. We could forecast and say in 6 months, it should be roughly worth this using actives and sales. We could take a guess at that. So, yeah, so there's a lot of ways that we could help people with value. I always say we can give you past value, present, or future value.
Which is really cool because I'm glad you brought up the part about working with it sounds like potentially investors to see
Mhm.
like what the ROI would be if they were to
Mhm.
work on this property depending on what they do to it. So I think it's really great that you can support them in that. Exactly like you shared, if they're putting in a certain amount of work or renovations, here's what they can anticipate to get money wise in return from that. So I think that helps them to know if they're making a smart purchase or not.
And we can do it from the income side too.
Hmm.
So if you have, let's say, a four-family property, and right now you're generating 6,000, and you're going to do XYZ to each unit, and you say, how much would those rents be if I had this? We could tell you, you'd be at 9,000. So you could get 3,000 in increase, and then your spend is how you get there.
Hmm.
But at least you'll know at 9,000, here's my mortgage, and this is what, you'll know kind of where you are. And we also forecast also for relocation. So relocation appraisals are on a separate form called the ERC form. And we give them like, here's the value today, and then in 3 months, it should be worth this. Because they want to know if the house doesn't sell, where would they be? And then, they could make some decisions. So I don't
Yeah.
do any of those, but I like them. They're unique.
Yeah. And like you said, it sounds like in certain circumstances, they can be really beneficial for the clients that you're working with.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they can make, I say, we provide valuation so people can make decisions on what they want to do.
Hmm.
I just had an appraiser call me and it's fresh on my head. He saw this new house. The buyers have already kind of moved in. You don't see that often. They're doing the purchase, value's really close to the purchase price, but they've just already started digging a hole for the pool. And I said, is there a gaping hole? And he said, yes. And I said, oh boy,
Oh,
because
no.
now we have to let the client know because let's say actually they close on the appraisal of this day. And then in a week, something unfortunate happens to the buyers. The bank inherits a property that's a house that's done with a gaping hole in the back.
Oh, no.
So now we have to give them what's called a cost to cure of, it might cost you 5,000 to fill it so they know their risk level with this loan. So we're in the business of risk. We don't try to be, but a lot of our clients use us for risk management and mitigation of, okay, I know this is more of a risky one.
Hmm.
This buyer has a lot of cash. The property's a little risky. I'll take the risk because I like their cash, you
Hmm.
know? Yeah. So that's how the banks use appraisals.
Interesting. And that reminds me too, like I know this is mentioned in your bio, but you have a lot of really great professional relationships with complementary service providers. And so that's one of the things that I always talk about is I feel like having referral partners or strategic partners is really great for growing your business. And I would love to hear your experience on that and how you found it's really helped you grow throughout the past several years.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for us to understand construction, first of all. And I've made everyone in my office take a construction course because we have to understand the differences and versus, knob and tube versus circuit breaker versus arc fault and everything. But also, we run into situations where we might call for a plumber.
Hmm.
Now, we're not going to refer a plumber in that instance, but it's good to know plumbers, electricians. It's good to know because people come to us outside of our workspace. I sort of look at it as like the real estate agent also is someone who is the driver of a lot of referrals because they interact with people.
Yeah.
And so if I'm gonna refer someone outside of my professional expertise, I have great architects, land surveyors, et cetera, things like that.
Hmm.
So it's beneficial, I think, for any business to not just stay in your silo, as I call it, but understand the full thing and be able to say, yeah, if you need this, we don't do it, but try these people.
Yeah. And I think in return, that makes you invaluable to your clients because you have these connections and people that you trust who can help them with various needs.
It keeps you going and it keeps you in positive mind share. Exactly. We're not looking for,
Yeah.
referrals or anything or money or anything like that. It's more of we want positive experience with everyone that we interact with, and we want them to say, these are the people. I had a compliment from a law firm in Braintree last week about we're really good, and I appreciate that. So
Hmm.
that's
Yeah.
what I want.
I love that.
Yeah.
And having been in the industry since 2009, how have you seen it change throughout almost the past 2 decades?
It's a great question. So, I mean, when I entered the business, we were using sketch paper and we were actually running tape to measure houses. And one of the big changes is the iPad to my right is that I could use something called LiDAR, which puts points on the house and it measures the house for me.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, it's huge. Yeah, I just did it. That was that house that's 2553. It
Hmm.
measured the house for me. And you still got to make some things and et cetera, add porches and decks and things. So that's a big change. The iPad itself, I can take pictures on the iPad. I can put the sketch on there. I could label the photos and I could label the sketch of where the kitchen, the bathroom is, everything. And so I'm basically, if you look at it, actually, I'm doing like 55 to 60% of the report,
Hmm.
sitting in my car when it's freezing, it's terrible, but sitting in my car and then just sort of, I get to like 60%. And then when I come home, I can do the remaining 40 in about an hour, my level, about an hour, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the technology has helped greatly from when we started.
And I imagine that has probably helped you to support so many more clients because it frees up your
Yeah.
time and your capacity to do so.
Yeah, and I think, you have to also, I'm a big component of not every client is a client for me.
Hmm.
We're not the cheapest, we're not the most expensive. But I know that the value that we bring, like, having an appraiser in Worcester, having an appraiser in Hanson and Pepperell, there's a value there of professionals that provide the same level of service because I've trained them all. But they're expanded beyond that to be really good.
Hmm.
So, there's a value with some banks that they can order from us and we can cover so much ground as opposed to being just a one-person shop.
Absolutely. And that makes me think of it too. I mean, it sounds like you do a lot of time traveling just in your car, going from house to house. And I'm curious to hear how you balance like the traveling portion with I guess like your office work they really need to focus on because I think I always am so interested by people who are kind of always on the go by for their roles and how they kind of
Sure.
juggle the two.
Sure. So my philosophy, and it doesn't mean that anyone else's philosophy is wrong, is I'm only as strong as my weakest appraiser. So everyone that I've trained can do everything that I could do. They're all FHA approved. They're all certified. They can all do the 9,000 square foot house. They could do the 600 square feet one bedroom house. And so, and then they come to me when they have a tough one, as opposed
Hmm.
to I'm checking everything and reading everything. They kind of manage up. So it's been a phenomenal relationship with all of them. And so I sort of just kind of let them be the professionals that they are. They have the licensing, the certification, the knowledge. And when there's new things that come up, we add to that repertoire. But that's the key, I think, to me is there's no limits on what
Hmm.
they could do. And that seems to have worked for me. And I'm adding two more trainees and I'm going to train them so they're the same thing. They can do everything I could do and they have the confidence to do it. It's key.
Yeah. And that's like a really good theme that you hit upon there is just building a team and having people that you trust and can work with you to help you do more and support more clients.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you understand that, I never signed up to be a CFO, but I have no choice. I
Yeah.
have to do that. I have to I have to make sure we get paid and mark people off and then do payroll. I have to run payroll today.
Hmm.
I have to train. I like training people. I like going to see houses and walking through, and we take it step by step from pictures to sketch to page one of the report, etc. I'm the guy who kind of dictates how much of a fee we're going to get or quote. I do all the kind of the quoting. Lenders are different where they have a certain a number and it's easier sometimes. We can still dictate, but they're in the kind of the ballpark of high volume. So I say, okay. So you have to do all that of running the business that I need to make sure that, I'm not doing a million appraisals all the time because I can't be the best to my team to do our
Hmm.
quarterly meetings or how can we get better or, what's a bad appraisal? Here's one. What did you see?
Yeah.
So, you just have to leave room to manage the business. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle. And I don't want to struggle with it. I want to do a really good job at it.
Yeah. That's a great piece of advice. And that makes me wonder too, for anyone who is listening to this episode who's maybe thinking about becoming an appraiser themselves, what advice would you have for them for being successful and getting started?
I will talk to anyone who's interested in my business. It's been a great business for me, from my family. And of course, I didn't have a family when I started, but I can't tell you the flexibility that it gives me has been great. Um, it gives me the ability to keep expanding. I mean, there's just, you think you've seen everything. I think I saw a house with like two bathrooms like next to each other. I was like, this is the first time I've seen this in like 16 years. So there's just always something new, always something new. So it's never boring. I just think that you have to have a passion for real estate, but you have to have a
Hmm.
passion for integrity because we get pressure. We get pressure from maybe the nice homeowner who wants a big number, but the market doesn't support. We used to, I wouldn't say so much, get pressure from lenders trying to hit certain numbers so they can make a mortgage. But now there's just so much regulation. You have to be strong where, you'll submit a report sometimes, Ashley, it doesn't meet. And, you're not going to get a call of someone screaming and cursing at you. No. But you know that people are disappointed. They'll come back with revisions. So you have to make sure you do a really strong report every time
Hmm.
so it can stand up anywhere. And that's the key.
Yeah. I love
So,
that. Great
so
piece of
these are
advice.
skills. Yeah, these are skills that people have to have. You have to have people skills. You're going into
Hmm.
people's houses. I offer to take my shoes off. Just treat people the way you want to be treated, and usually you're good.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. And I think that's important. I feel like in any role is just having good people skills and common courtesy and being able to, like you said, treat people how you'd want to be treated.
I mean, like I said, we get a lot of people who want certain things, and we have to be able to stick by our opinion of value that's supported by the market. And I tell everyone, it's
Hmm.
not about what I think. I could go into a house and you could have butcher block. I don't care. You know, it's all about what does the market say about that?
Hmm.
And that's what I'm doing my opinion based on. I tell you, when I have to have stuff to do an opinion, I don't just pick it out of my brain and say, Ashley, I like you, $1 million, $1 million your house. No, because then they'll send that to the state and then they'll retire me. So I don't want to get retired yet. So
Yes,
yes,
absolutely.
yeah,
And
yeah.
one of my favorite questions to ask our guests is what their favorite local businesses are to support. So I'm curious to hear what yours might be.
A local business that I like.
Hmm.
Oh, there's so many. Can I say an organization?
Of course.
There's one that I've become a fan of. They actually have a gala next week, and it's called NeighborWorks Housing Solutions. They're out of the South Shore of Quincy, and they do just an amazing job of not just talking, they actually build housing for 55 plus. They build housing, income restricted people. They build housing for veterans. They actually do an amazing job. And they're also landlords. They offer raft services. So they're actually making what I think is inroads in developments that don't work for the developer, but
Mhm.
they're able to do them. They have a really nice one next to Holbrook Town Hall. They're doing one right now in Brockton near I think the Campello commuter rail. Just excellent, excellent projects. Jefferson School, I believe, in Brockton was just sitting there rotting away. Now it's, I think, 30 units of one bedrooms for people, and they're sold out. So I love things of people actually getting their hands dirty and doing great things for others.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
shout out. NeighborWorks is a really good organization, so
They're
I'm glad you
great.
mentioned them.
Yeah, I'll be eating at that food. I gotta buy my ticket. I gotta. Yeah.
Daniel, this has been such a good episode, and I've so enjoyed having you on the show to share everything that you've been doing in evaluations and as an appraiser. And I'd love to have you share with our listeners where they can find you online in case they'd like to connect.
Sure. Our website, which I created, which is scary, is dcvaluations.com. It's my initials, DC, or DC Val, VAL will get you there too, or my name will get you there too, danyelcollings.com. And you can order an appraisal there. You can email us with what you have, and me or my office managers will respond, and so we can quote you.
Amazing. And I'll include all your contact info in the show notes that way listeners can easily connect with you from there. Thank you so much again for coming on this week's show.
Thank you so much for having me.